We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA.
Hussein and his regime are concealing their efforts to produce more weapons of mass destruction.
Welcome back to Notify America. We have multiple pressing stories to get to, stories that include one of the most powerful Republicans in the House proving once again his interests are aligned with deep state Washington. Not you, not me. He does the bidding of the war machine, folks, and we have the proof. Also, a new announcement from the city of Chicago that's about to make the streets over there even more dangerous than they already are. Wait till you hear about this. And a new critical amendment is about to be voted on in Congress that would require a warrant in order to spy on Americans using FISA. Well, the Biden administration is out for blood on a pressure campaign to flip as many votes as possible right now. Absolutely outrageous. We have the details. We have the video. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps the channel out. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these daily updates. In the United States, our intel agencies and the FBI can conduct surveillance on American citizens without a traditional warrant if they go through the FISA court, a secret court set up back in 1978 that set out to make it easier for intel collection on foreign communication. Never was it imagined it would be turned inward and used against Americans, a complete Orwellian nightmare. Well, that's what has happened. We also saw how they used FISA to surveil the Trump campaign in 2016, and there's many, many more examples of this. Well, FISA, our nation's warrantless surveillance program, is about to be extended again. But this time, the House Freedom Caucus is pushing for a vote on a new amendment that would add a warrant requirement to FISA for any domestic surveillance, which means spying on American citizens. A lot of Americans probably don't even realize that FISA allows domestic surveillance. Well, it does if that American is in some way in communication with a foreigner. It doesn't even have to be direct communication. It could be tertiary communication. If, for example, your friend speaks to his cousin from Russia on the phone from time to time, or even his friend's friend, even though you've never spoken to his cousin, your calls could still be surveilled because you're tangentially connected, right? Crazy. Well, watch as Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, is asked about this yesterday and explains how the Biden administration is opposed to this, saying they don't believe a warrant requirement is a good idea. Absolutely outrageous. Watch this.
On FISA, there are a couple of amendments that are being considered. One of them would require a warrant for every query of lawfully collected data. If that were to pass and get into the bill, would the president veto that bill?
So I'm not in a position to stand here today and make veto threats on behalf of the president. Those are decisions for him to make. What I will tell you is that we do not believe that that serves the national security interests of the United States. And in fact, today I will be making that case to a number of members that the warrant requirement as conceived is not the best way actually to ensure the protection of the personal privacy of Americans. There are a number of other elements of the bill that we have supported that would reform and update FISA to protect the civil liberties of Americans, but a warrant requirement from our perspective would go too far in undermining the very purpose of FISA, and frankly, it would put victims at risk.
In another story, the mayor of Chicago just ended his city's ShotSpotter contract, a vital piece of gunshot detection technology, alerting law enforcement within seconds when shots are fired. The mayor's office says the reason for ending the deal, get this, is that it discriminates against communities of color. You can't make this up. Watch this.
ShotSpotter alerts police departments to gunshots fired through acoustic sensors. That company took a stock hit Tuesday after Mayor Brandon Johnson announced he would fulfill a campaign promise and give the company a 6-month extension, but then not renew their deal. The mayor's announcement before he had a deal signed with the company.
The city has lost all its leverage when you make an announcement that you're canceling ShotSpotter and extending it until September without having a signed contract.
Likewise, Alderman Chris Taliaferro is also concerned.
It is a great loss for the city of Chicago, particularly as we prepare to go into the summer months and as we go into a Democratic National Convention already with a police department that is undersized by at least 2,000 officers.
President Biden came out swinging last week after the special counsel heard his report claiming he couldn't remember when his son Beau had passed away. The report, it was long and detailed, over 300 pages in length, looking at if the president broke the law by retaining classified documents after leaving office in 2016. Since the report was released, Biden's been harping on why Hur would even ask him about his son.
President Biden became heated, you'll remember, responding to the special counsel's assertion that he could not remember within several years when his son Beau died. Last week, the president criticized Hur for asking him about it.
How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business.
But tonight, NBC News has learned that Hur never asked that question, according to two people familiar with the interview last fall. They say it was the president, not Hur or his team, who first introduced Beau Biden's death. The sources say the president got the date, May 30th, correct, but not the year.
In another story, one of the most powerful members of Congress, Republican Mike Turner, chairman of the House Intel Committee, released an eye-popping statement yesterday saying, quote, "Today, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intel has made available to all members of Congress information concerning a serious national security threat. I am requesting that President Biden declassify all info relating to this threat so that Congress, the administration, and our allies can openly discuss the actions necessary to respond to it." Now, this set off a tidal wave in Washington and is now all the media can talk about, coincidentally. Watch this.
We have new reporting on a cryptic message that the House Intelligence Committee released on social media about a, quote, serious national security threat. What do we know about this?
Cryptic is the right word. We still have more questions than answers at this point.
This must be a grave situation for the chair of the Intelligence Committee to make such a bold statement.
The threat is related to Russia.
It's not that Martians are going to land right now in the U.S., but it is something of concern.
There's really no cause for panic or alarm around this particular piece of intelligence.
Should be concerned. It's serious. That's all I can say right now.
This is a serious issue. There are many serious issues that we undertake all the time, but there's no need to panic. This is not an immediate crisis.
This is one more thing to worry about in terms of Vladimir Putin and his attack on democracy and freedom.
Now, before we even look at what he's talking about, because a lot more info has come out, the entire media establishment's all over this story, you got to ask why, and we will. But first, just know Mike Turner, the congressman who released the statement, who set all of this into motion, he's a member of the Gang of Eight, which means he's one of 8 members of Congress who are supposed to be looped in to sensitive matters of national security. Basically, they're above all the rest of Congress. First, the chairman, by the way, of the House Intel Committee alone, which is who he is one of only 2 people on the Hill who have SAP clearance, which means they're clear to conduct oversight on special access programs, black budget programs. There's this odd paradox in Washington where Congress is supposed to have oversight responsibility, right? But 99% of Congress, more than that, isn't even cleared to know about the real sensitive top secret information from the Pentagon, from the IC, from the intel community. Only congressmen on specific committees have clearance for that kind of thing. But then it gets even odder because top secret clearance still doesn't provide you oversight over the real important sensitive information, the black budget programs that are compartmentalized in nature. They're called SAP programs. And even with top secret clearance, you still don't have access. These programs fall outside of that clearance structure. It's set up like that purposely, where you only gain access if you have a need to know. Well, only 2 people in Congress have that level of access, have a need to know. Speaker of the House and the chairman of the House Intel Committee, Mike Turner. So explain how Congress can conduct oversight when only 2 people even are able to access or are supposed to be able to gain access to the information. And I say all of this just to help explain how looped in this one congressman is or should be. By the way, he's also the same person, the same congressman who single-handedly gutted the UAP Disclosure Act a few months ago. Remember the bill that was going to shed light on what the government knows about UFOs? Well, Mike Turner, the chair of the House Intel Committee, he had to sign off on it, and he wouldn't. This guy is captured by the military-industrial complex. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is located inside his district. His largest donors are all big military contractors like Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed. He is quite literally one of the worst, most damaging members of Congress, and he's a Republican. So with that information and backstory in mind, yesterday he puts this statement out, which did two things. It distracted the media from covering Joe Biden's waning mental clarity. Look at Google's newsfeed yesterday morning under politics, all stories about Biden's memory. Now it's got nothing to do with that. And second, it managed to scare everyone in Washington into thinking Russia is a threat again, right at the same time that this $96 billion military aid package for Ukraine is heading over to the House.
This bipartisan legislation will allow the United States to continue to support the people of Ukraine alongside our allies and partners as they fight every single day to defend their freedom and independence.
Can you tell Americans that there's nothing they have to worry about right now in terms of what he describes as a national security threat?
Look, I think in a way that question it is impossible to answer with a straight yes.
This is Washington in a nutshell, folks. It's all a big game of information, of misinformation and manipulation. Turns out the story is much to do about nothing, not about UFOs. And believe me, if it was, Mike Turner would be the last person to talk about it or leak it. He is far from being someone who wants to get on board with this UFO, UAP transparency train. And other members on his committee who took him up on the briefing said it's nothing new or pressing. CNN claims it's about Russia building space-based nuclear weapons, something they've been trying to do for decades. Look, war is started from telling lies, convincing your population with lies because people don't like war. Hopefully, peace can be started from telling the truth, which we're trying to do. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.